I had a couple that would come, they were on the verge of divorce, and they would always come to me individually, would never come together. And they just never did anything I told them to do. But then they'd come back a week later for another 40-minute conversation.
Sure.
And it was just wearing me out emotionally to the point that I started avoiding them. I called up a friend of mine who was the head of a counseling program. And so this guy was a pastor, but he was also a doctor. I said, Doc, this is driving me crazy. I don't know what to do with this. It's wearing me out emotionally. And he said something very significant. Most pastors do not understand the difference between pastoral counseling and clinical counseling.
Sure.
What is the difference? He said it moves from pastoral counseling to clinical counseling when people will not let go of their dysfunction.
Yeah.
And so being able to recognize that wait a minute, there's something deeper here that we need to get at.
Correct.
That is a key skill set with the pastor, recognizing, like you said, this is beyond my capacity to fix it.
Yes.
And being able to say, that doesn't mean I'm a bad person or a bad pastor. It just means that I'm outside of my depth.
Yes.
What was the takeaway or the big lesson for you out of that whole process?
I think the biggest thing for me was realizing that within church, we were experts in dealing with the spiritual, but we were very shallow in dealing with emotional and physical concerns that people battle with. And so what we would do is that we'll have people just suppress those emotions, those feelings, without giving language to that. And so you'll see people with demonstrating microaggression or irritability and not understand what the real issue is. And they just think, oh, let me just pray about it. Now, I offended you. I hurt your feelings,
right?
But I can't name what was triggering within me that would cause me to harm you.
Right.
And so let me just go home, let me just go pray about it. And I discovered that people were masking so much pain in the name of Jesus. And they thought that that was a badge of honor to carry this pain because this is my cross to bear. Let me carry this pain, not really deal with it and learn to, there's a term I use in my writing, metabolizing that trauma. That means that I need to learn from that.
There are still things as a pastor, yes, there are spiritual issues, but sometimes our problems that we're dealing with are emotional, they're chemical, they're physical. My wife's a psychologist. My daughter's a therapist.
Wow.
Yeah, I used to tease my wife and say, Sharon, if people listen to me, you'd be out of a job.
So my wife and our running joke is with her being an attorney, me being a preacher, when we're having a discussion with our kids, my wife is the lawgiver, so to speak. And I said, you know, we're not under the law anymore.
You know, one of the most important things that we deal with as men is our emotional mental health. And what I've found personally is that healing, a lot of people deal more with hiding than they do healing. A lot of people, a lot of men especially, we're very good at covering up our pain. We're not really good at healing from our pain. And so in today's conversation on Real Life Matters, where we're real life people dealing with real life problems, trying to come up with real life solutions, I'm going to be talking about how do we help men heal. All of us need to heal, but we're going to be talking about how do we help men heal. So thank you for joining us this episode of Real Life Matters. I'm here this morning with a new friend. I got a new friend that I met just a few weeks ago. Maybe 6 weeks ago at the time of this taping. One of my best friends called me up and he said, Jay, I want you to meet this guy. And we went out to breakfast and we talked and I was like, okay, this is a good brother. Yeah. And I said, and so I was excited about getting a chance to talk with him. And I'd read his curriculum vitae and my podcast ain't long enough. So,
my man.
But let me just tell you something about him and then I'm going to turn it over and we're just going to talk. But he's the senior pastor of All Nations Community Church in Flossmoor, Illinois. He's earned a doctorate of ministry in pastoral counseling. He has a really deep passion for mentoring, ministry, community engagement, and then so another passion about healing that we're going to talk about in a second. He's been married for 20 years.
20 years.
I'm not going to give his wife's name because she might not appreciate that. So I'm just going to give, but he's been married for 20 years. Thank you, brother, for joining me today.
Too easy.
Too easy. Too easy. So we're looking forward to for this conversation. So let me just jump right in. I want to maximize our time.
Sure.
Let's just jump right in. You have a D.Min, a doctor in ministry in pastoral counseling. But you told me that the topic of your thesis was the intersection of theology and therapy, right?
Yes.
So could you talk about that a little bit?
I will try to do it a little bit.
Yeah, listen, my wife just got her doctorate. I know that it's hard for you all when you spend 80 hours a week studying on something to give a little bit.
Yes.
But give me, what's the essence of that topic?
Yeah.
Kind of what inspired you to tackle that topic?
Yeah.
And then maybe, what did you get?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was understanding that where theology works best is that it gives hope. And so as a pastor, even as a youth pastor, I would see people run to the church because they were experiencing some type of crisis. And it was, hey, I need to do something about this. So they'll run to the church, but beneath the surface, there were still these underlying issues of addiction, wounds of the past. They would be experiencing all these issues that were unmet or undealt with. And they thought that if I just come and pray, that issue will go away. Then they'll find themselves succumbing back to those same pressures that's beneath the surface. And I said, well, okay, I understand that faith, theology gives us hope. It helps us to understand that there's something greater, bigger than us that can anchor our soul, anchor our identity, and that's great. But people had no steps to bring about healing. So where therapy comes in is that it gives you a path. But if you have therapy alone, it keeps people kind of stuck with no hope. The idea is that we want to have forward progress. And so as I would witness these people, and they were repeat offenders. I mean, they would come, it would be week after week, and oftentimes in some church settings, you have this altar call, and you see the same people come down with the same issue, and they thought prayer would resolve this, but they never had the steps that would move them from this space of dealing with their issues. And I said, well, God, there has to be a way to provide a holistic approach that would allow these two worlds to intersect, that can provide a path of healing and wholeness for the person. And so that's where it came about as I began to really see this up front. And then God called me all the way to Illinois to see not just the individual that was struggling, but also a whole body of people struggling with the issue.
So what really the impetus for you was, how do I best help my congregation get out of this
repeated cycle?
This crazy cycle.
Absolutely.
Yeah, out of this loop of hurt and not really being able to find healing, but just kind of hiding, kind of covering up, and just kind of dealing with that. So
absolutely.
What did you, as you worked through that? Because you just got, if I'm not mistaken, just in February.
In February.
You got hooded.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You got hooded, yeah.
Thank you.
What was the takeaway or the big lesson for you out of that whole process?
I think the biggest thing for me was realizing that within church, we were experts in dealing with the spiritual, but we were very shallow in dealing with emotional and physical concerns that people battle with. And so what we would do is that we would have people just suppress those emotions, those feelings, without giving language to that. And think of it as if you're trying to put ping pong balls underwater. You can hold it down for so long, but eventually some of those will be released and they will rise to the surface. And so you'll see people with demonstrating microaggression or irritability and not understand what the real issue is, and they just think, oh, let me just pray about it. Now, I offended you, I hurt your feelings, but I can't name what was triggering within me that would cause me to harm you. And so let me just go home, let me just go pray about it. So we have our prayer closets, right? So I'm not going to resolve this here because I hadn't resolved it here. And I discovered that people were masking so much pain in the name of Jesus. And they thought that that was a badge of honor to carry this pain, because this is my cross to bear. Let me carry this pain, not really deal with it, and learn to, there's a term I use in my writing, metabolizing that trauma. That means that I need to learn from that. God doesn't waste moments, right? And so the experiences that we encounter, those traumatic moments, those dire moments, God allows us to use those as opportunities to, first of all, create dependency upon Him, but then also develop our very character and very being. And me ignoring those realities, those pains, those moments of suffering does a really disservice to my own spiritual formation.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that, what created that mindset within the church? What do you think?
So in part, the church
Okay.
wanted to, well, first of all, I think the first part is not having the tools and skills to deal with that, right? Because we think that we are only supposed to deal with just the spiritual.
Right.
But when we think about salvation is comprehensive. It doesn't just deal with my soul, it deals with my complete being.
Right.
But somewhere down our journey in church life that we've now just relegated that to just that one leg in our own being. So we just want to deal with the spiritual and ignore everything else. Yeah. And so one of the things that I think the church has to own is that we have to learn how to engage in the whole person. I oftentimes say we minister to the, we don't just need to minister to the soul, we need to minister to the whole.
Right, yeah.
And because we fail to minister to the whole, it creates this disconnect where I only want to deal with spiritual and leave the emotional and physical part out of it, largely because not informed, not equipped.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I am working on a resource right now based upon Luke 2:52. Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and men.
Yeah.
And the document or the resource is called Becoming Wholly Healthy.
Holy health, yeah.
And looking at all of those aspects of Jesus grew in wisdom, intellectually, stature, physically, favor with God, spiritually, favor with men, socially, right? And so when you look at all of those aspects of yourself, of your relationships, of your mental aspect, your spiritual aspect, all of those things, there is a wholeness to that.
Absolutely.
And Jesus was spiritual, but he also was in submission to his parents.
Right.
He also was in good relationships with the people in the community. He had a good sense of self. And so, but I think you're right. You've been in ministry for 20 years or so. I've been in ministry for 43. And I think about all of those, the people I talk to that are so heavenly minded that they're no earthly good.
And that's,
problem. And so I think that has a lot to do with that.
But we live here.
We live here.
We live here.
Yeah.
And while we understand heaven ultimately is our final destination, but we haven't mastered how to equip people to live here.
As human beings.
Yes. All of who we are.
Yes, we have divine purpose and we have a divine destiny, but we are still in a human experience.
Yes.
And we have to learn how to deal with that. And I agree with you. I think the church has not always been equipped. We were talking earlier how I have a master of divinity. It's 140 hours, but I got 3 hours on pastoral counseling.
Okay.
Out of 140 hours, and most of what I do, maybe not most of what I do, but a significant part of what I do as a pastor is counseling people. But yet, I wasn't equipped to do that. And so a lot of it was like trial by fire, just like, figuring it out. And, there's not every problem that people deal with is demonic.
Correct.
A lot of problems that's the easy way out. Let's just go pray.
Yes, and it's amazing because even as I think about that although we may label something demonic, it's easy to not deal with it.
Yeah.
Because it's less messy.
Yes.
And so the reality is that when we see and that issue, that concern, that trouble, whatever that problem is, once it's exposed, you can't unsee it.
Right.
And now you have to deal with it. You have to do something with it. And for many people, rather than seeing it, they would rather just turn a blind eye because now if I see, I have to do something with that.
Right. Right.
Jay Pethek, I think the name of this book is called Church Zero. One of the things he talks about is his journey to Ireland. He saw these shepherds with sheep, and he saw where one had defecated. And he says, and that shepherd put his hands right in that space so that he can clean that area, because if it remained unclean, it could potentially kill that animal.
Right.
And he says, and that's what pastoral leadership, pastoral counseling looks like. It literally means put your hand in the mess and do what you can to help clean them up so that it preserves their life. And I don't think I've ever heard pastoring described in that vivid picture?
And I'm not sure if I want to have that picture in my head.
You're welcome.
But you know what? That is so absolutely true.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So absolutely true. A friend of mine used to say, ministry is messy.
Gosh, yes.
And I think that is the problem, is
Yeah.
that being able, I can pray from a distance.
Come on, man.
I can pray from a distance.
Come on.
You know what? But being in life, walking with people through their messiness, through their
Yes.
brokenness, through their stubbornness, all of those things
Yeah.
is the nature of this calling. I want to continue in a few more moments at this 35,000 view.
Sure.
And then I want to kind of zero down in on some very specific areas. But in general, what are some things that you think that pastors can do to better equip themselves and their churches for this becoming wholly healthy?
Yeah.
For dealing with this wholeness, not just the holiness, but the wholeness
yes.
of their holiness. What are some practical things that pastors can do in their churches for themselves and for their churches to create that kind of environment?
Yeah. You know, as much as going through seminary prepares us to be expert preachers, the thing that I think pastors have to also own and name is that there's an area of deficiency in how they practice ministry. And so that means I have to learn. So the idea is, if I know there's a deficiency, I need to learn so that I can continue to grow. And one of the things I did, and I think it would be helpful, is to explore other ways of pastoral counseling or pastoral care that moves away from what I've always known pastoral counseling to be. And that's not just making a visit to the hospital or making a visit to the, okay, what are some places that can teach me areas of like ministering to the wholeness?
Right.
And for me, I learned through clinical pastoral education, and that's working in a hospital setting to see people, not see a church member, to see a person. And I think sometimes pastors become so tunnel vision to see people as a member rather than a person that is comprised of spirit, mind, and body.
Right.
And if I see them completely, then I understand that I have to minister to all those components as best I can.
Yeah.
So when you look at Nehemiah, when he arrives onto the scene, he doesn't just say, hey, let's go build.
Right.
He says, well, let's see the rubble first.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's something not working, there's something broken here.
Yeah.
And the first step, if you attend like AA meetings, is that you got to acknowledge that there's a problem.
Yeah.
And pastor, if you don't acknowledge that there's a problem, then you won't ever do anything.
If you can't admit it, you can't quit it.
Come on, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that has to be the biggest priority, that if I see people, especially those repeat offenders, and I'm going to say this, and if you see these repeat offenders, do not minimize that experience.
Right.
Acknowledge that there's got to be something else going on. There's a problem here.
Right.
You got to see it. And what we'll tend to do, and I grew up in the hood, and we had some people who had mental health issues, and we just label them crazy. That has permeated the church. And so we'll see someone who's a repeat offender. Here comes Susie again.
Right.
She always needing prayer.
Right.
Rather than exploring. So see the person and explore.
Yeah.
And if you feel overwhelmed, and this is hard, and this is going to be challenging, ask for help.
Yeah.
Ask some of your colleagues. They may have an answer.
Right.
Let's not just talk about how many members you got in the church. Let's not just talk about what kind of programs or what revival you got coming up. Let's move beyond the surface and let's deal with real ministry.
Yeah. If I could just jump in there, and I want you to give us some more practical steps churches can do.
Yeah.
But I just want to jump in right there. When I was pastoring in Colorado, I had a couple that would come. They were on the verge of divorce, and they would always come to me individually, would never come together.
Yeah.
They would always come to me individually to talk. And they just never did anything I told them to do. But then they'd come back a week later for another 40-minute conversation.
Sure.
And it was just wearing me out emotionally to the point that I started avoiding them. I see them coming, and I ducked out the other way. I was like Usain Bolt with these folks. They were coming this way, and I was going that way. I called up a friend of mine who was the head of a counseling program for a very, very large church. As a matter of fact, the program, their counseling ministry was so good, the state referred people to them, to this church. That's how good their program was. And so this guy was a pastor, but he was also a doctor of psychology. I said, and I told him, I said, Doc, this is driving me crazy. I don't know what to do with this. It's wearing me out emotionally. And he said something very significant. Most pastors do not understand the difference between pastoral counseling and clinical counseling.
Sure.
And I said, you're right. I've never even heard that distinction. What is the difference? He said it moves from pastoral counseling to clinical counseling when people will not let go of their dysfunction. So when you're talking about these repeat offenders, you're talking about people who are still giving you, when you say you need to do this, this, and this, or this is the issue, their response is going to be, yeah, but.
Yeah, but.
Yeah, but. And once they say, yeah, but, they've negated everything you've said or everything they've just said. And now they're going to go right back into that cycle.
Yeah.
And so being able to recognize that wait a minute, there's something deeper here that we need to get at.
Correct.
That is a key skill set. And I think this is the other thing with this, is that with the pastor, recognizing, like you said, this is beyond my capacity to fix it.
Yes.
And being able to say, that doesn't mean I'm a bad person or a bad pastor. It just means that I'm outside of my depth.
Yes.
You know, I'm fishing in deep waters, but I got trout line, and I find I'm catching marlins, and I got trout line. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I think that for the pastor, is recognizing and admitting deficiencies.
Absolutely.
And saying, what do I need to do in order to step my game up to meet the needs of the people that I'm working with?
Yeah, a friend of mine would oftentimes describe that kind of mindset where the pastor feels like, hey, I got all the answers, I got all the solutions. The fallacy of omnipotence. I feel like I'm all powerful. I can do anything. In reality, none of us are all powerful.
Right.
None of us have all the answers. And recognizing that is a sign of humility. Not recognizing that is pride.
Right. You know what? And again, I know this is going to happen. I know we're going to talk and it's just going to spin off, but I just want to continue to hit that just for those who are watching this and saying, well, but the Bible says. Well, let me tell you what the Bible says. Moses had this mega church coming out of Egypt. He had a mega church coming out of Egypt. And I don't know how many thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people were in this congregation. And the scripture says that the people stood before Moses day and night. Day and night. And his father-in-law was sitting there checking that out, and he said, what are you doing? And Moses says, the people need me. The people need me to give them, to stand before God, before them, and to tell them what God says. And to give them answers. And his response was, you're going to kill them and you're going to kill yourself. This is too big for you.
Absolutely.
He says, you teach them what's right. You teach them God's word. Help them understand the decrees. He says, but then you identify men of capacity, of character, of capacity, character, capability, and you delegate to them, give them responsibility over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. He said they only come back to you, free them to solve the problems, but they only come back to you when there's something they can't handle. I think that's a model. As I think about that, I can't handle every problem. I'm not equipped to handle every single issue that comes before me as a pastor. Because people will come to you with everything. I had a lady came to me recently at church asking me to solve a problem with her son's transcripts at a university. I was like, what am I supposed to do with that, right?
Right.
And so, but see, a proud pastor was like, oh yeah, I got that. I'll make some phone calls and I'll take care of that. No. What I need to do is that I need to have identified other people within the congregation who have capacity. Or maybe outside of the congregation that have capabilities to do something that I can't do, and then give them the freedom to do that. But there's a humility that must be in us as leaders to say, I don't have the answers yet. But I'll help you find it, or I will send you to somebody who can do it better than me.
Yeah, I think Moses is a great case study, of following a male's trajectory to becoming more humbled.
Yes.
So when you see Moses early in his journey, he's this Prince of Egypt,
Right.
got it going on.
Right.
He sees injustice. He sees this Egyptian harming this Hebrew, and he acts out of that.
Right.
Most people would say that this version of Moses was acting out of anger.
Yeah.
And I don't think you really read that in the text.
Right.
What I believe for Moses that he felt powerful.
Right.
In that moment, he felt that he was confident enough to interject into this, rather than understanding this and looking at it through humility, because humility constrains.
Right.
Okay, I understand. I may have the power, but I don't have to wield it right now.
Right.
But because there was no one in his space to speak to him to say, hey, Moses, yes, you're powerful. Yes, you're great. You're not self-aware to constrain your power. Now you harm someone.
Right.
But then you fast forward, you see that he has people around him, like a Jethro, that's seasoned in life. He's not so prideful, even though he's still powerful. He's still leading a mega church.
Right.
He was still open to hear wise counsel.
Right.
And I think many men may find themselves on that spectrum somewhere. They may be the young Moses who's powerful and understand that in itself can be its own emotion.
Right.
I feel powerful, but without humility to taper that, I can be harmful to the people around me.
That's good, man. That's good. That's good stuff. That's good. So, okay, I want to go there, but I'm not going there.
My man.
I want to go. I want to ride that tsunami, but I'm putting up my surfboard. I'm gonna put it up. Okay. So let's look at. So what are some other things? So what do pastors need to do in order to better equip their churches? So one of them is self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
Another one is the recognition that there are other factors other than just the spiritual factors that are affecting people's behaviors. Learn to ask the right questions, to go deeper.
Yes.
As I like to say, to begin to dig fruits. To dig roots, not just pick fruits.
Sure.
Okay. What are some other things?
And just, staying with that, as far as even asking questions, we've been equipped to ask questions.
Yeah.
When you think about exegetical work, exposition, right?
Yeah.
All these things are tools that we already have in our tool bag.
Right.
We just apply them only to Scripture.
Right.
Because we're oftentimes asked and tasked to interrogate the Scripture.
Right.
To try to pull out things that we won't just see on the surface.
Right.
Gosh, Doc. Pastors do the same thing, right?
Exactly.
So if you see a
learn
persistent...
how to exegete people.
Exegete people.
There you go.
Exegete your community, right?
Yeah.
So begin to look deeply, ask questions. Why is Susie coming down here every week?
Yeah.
Okay, what is it that's in her world that's keep bringing her back to the altar?
Yeah.
What things am I seeing persistent amongst the congregation that seems to be off?
Yeah.
What's happening in our surrounding community that needs to be addressed? Like, therapy is about not just getting help, it's about getting tools.
Yeah.
And then using those tools based on the circumstances that you're faced with. So if you're grieving, then you get tools on how to cope with the grief.
Right.
And so when you go through, and it's not just when you lose a loved one, it could be if your health change, you begin to grieve the fact that your body has changed, right? And you begin to apply that coping skill to that level of grief. Well, if a pastor's been trained to exegete, well, let's now take that skill, that tool, and now use that to fuel yourself to be a better pastor.
Yeah.
Right. And I think sometimes we get, again, going back to the tunnel vision, we only apply these tools that we've been given into one specific lane, the preaching moment.
Yeah.
And that skill can be an incredible tool to level up your pastoral care. So if you're visiting someone in their home, not just look at the person, look at the surroundings.
Yeah.
Right? What's happening? They may be living as a hoarder, and that could be affecting.
Right. Absolutely.
So use that skill.
Yeah. Really paying attention to the whole person.
Yes.
Really paying attention to the whole person. And I
Yes.
think also knowing that I'm not in some kind of way diminishing my spirituality when I acknowledge that there's something beyond that, beyond
Correct.
me or beyond just, like I said, and again, I'm not denigrating prayer at all, obviously. I'm not denigrating
Absolutely.
prayer, but I'm simply saying there's a collaborative nature, a collaborative relationship between God and his people. And I'm trying to remember something that I wrote last week, but I said that there are disciplines that must be practiced and decisions that must be made in this physical realm in order to manifest the victory that Jesus has created or has accomplished in the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
So when Jesus stood the man at the pool of Bethesda and he said, stand up, pick up your mat and walk, and instantly the man was healed.
Yeah.
If the man had not done those physical actions of standing up, taking up his mat, and walking, what had been accomplished in the spiritual realm would never have been manifested.
Come on.
Because there is this collaborative relationship between God and people. I am on a fitness thing right now and a nutrition thing, and I can claim the body of Michael B. Jordan.
Come on, man.
You know,
come on.
I can manifest that.
Yeah.
I can speak that.
All you want.
All I
life
want.
And death in the tongue.
And yes, and you know what? I listen in the name of Jesus. I claim an 8-pack. I don't want a 6-pack.
Come on.
God can do exceedingly abundantly above all we can ask or even think.
Speak.
So I'm going to manifest this 8-pack. But I won't put down the Krispy Kreme. I won't put down the McDonald's.
Yeah.
No, there is a correlation between what we do in the physical and what we do and what happens in the spiritual. That the scripture tells us to work hard to show the evidence of our salvation.
Yeah.
So there is that. It's really important that we understand, like you said, that holistic nature of that. So,
and I think Jesus is the model for that, as you just described. So another example is when the man who was paralyzed, his 4 friends, brings him to Jesus.
Yeah.
And notice the holistic approach Jesus takes with him. He says, your sins are forgiven, dealing with the spiritual, get up and walk physical. Right. And to me, I think if we begin to understand that Jesus' incarnational ministry is not just, let me make you spiritually fit. I want to make you holistically fit because you need to be able to impact the world and you need all of yourself.
And then, so let's look at that one other area too. If I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, because I haven't looked at that passage in a while, but didn't he also say something about his friends?
I was going to go there next.
So there's a relational aspect of it. He wanted him to be aware that it was the faith of his friends that brought him when he didn't even have the capacity. So you need to be aware that you are being healed because of the relationships. So therefore, don't minimize the importance of community. So that's also a part of the healing that has to happen.
You know, and I think another thing that I think pastors have to be aware of as well is not seeding things that can be devastating to the congregations. I've heard sermons where rather than seeing Nehemiah building these walls in order to help strengthen community, but use it as a tool to be divisive. Okay, so I'm almost preaching a message of isolation rather than a sense of community. And I've heard messages that almost see suspicion of the person sitting next to you rather than say, hey, see this person as part of the community of your own spiritual formation. So this brother had a community that cared enough about him that would do whatever was necessary to get him to a place of healing. And so that means there has to be a level of trust there. But when a person has unresolved trauma, and this is where self-awareness, when a person has trauma or grief that's unresolved, it erodes trust. And so therefore, I'm always going to be suspicious of the people I even worship with. I don't trust them. And even when you look through scripture, there are like 69 passages that talks about one anothering. So love one another, pray for one another, bear one another's burden. It speaks to this idea of community, and community rests upon our ability to trust. So Pastor, if you're not dealt with the issues of your own heart, your own trauma, and process that, now you're projecting mistrust to people, which only reinforces a community of mistrust and a culture that breeds further trauma.
So another practical step that we can take in the church to help people deal with some of those things is really emphasizing the importance of fellowship and community. What is embracing community? I think one of the things that.
But the pastor also has to model that.
The pastor has to model that. I need to be in community. I can't just be like, step away from my life. I'm over here. But we need to model I need you.
Yeah. Come on.
We need to model interdependence. I use this illustration often. If you walk out to your car and you see a hand laying next to your door of your car, we're not on the Addams Family where it's thing, but you see just a hand laying there. Your first thoughts are not going to be, I wonder who did the nails. Right?
Come on.
Your first thought is going to be, why is that hand not connected to the body? So in other words, you don't see the hand individually. You see the hand only in the context of the body. And if that hand is not connected to the body, something is wrong.
Come on.
The other thing that's significant is that hand finds its fullest expression
when it's connected.
When it's connected to the body.
Come on, man.
Hands are amazing, but not by themselves. Hands are amazing because they are connected and helping the body accomplish its desires, right?
Absolutely.
And so, therefore, we need to put a greater emphasis within the church on community, and this common unity that we have, and how do we build that as a means of self-awareness and need and the humility. When you look at Elijah, Elijah ended up in the cave of isolation. But when you watch his journey from the mountaintop to the cave, he was shucking relationships left and right.
God, yes.
And he ended up by himself in the cave. And as I often tell people, nothing healthy to eat grows in the cave.
Come on.
And so if you're in the cave of isolation, the next thing you know, you're going to be asking God to get rid of you.
Yeah.
And so you need that light in relationships. And so I think as churches, we must emphasize community, not just coming to listen to the pastor.
Can't be that.
But I need you to come and to be interconnected with the body and recognize I need you.
Yeah.
The songwriter, I need you, you need me, we're all a part of the same family, So
and I think just within that sense of isolation makes you even more vulnerable to other things.
Yes.
Phenomenologically speaking, when you look at the life of Elisha in that downward spiral from the mountain to the cave, he's in a dark place, not really eating. Right? These are all symptoms that oftentimes psychologists would say signs of depression.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So if you just look at it, he looks like a person who doesn't have community, who's now spiraled into a state of depression. And the same can happen to someone who is disconnected from community. That there are things that when you're living life with each other, I can see when things are off with Jason.
Right.
Man, his speech is a little off.
Right.
His disposition, his countenance is off.
Right.
Right. Because self-awareness, as much as we may think we're very self-aware, but the best way is to be able to be in front of someone who can point out things that you're not picking up on yourself.
Exactly.
That raises the level of self-awareness. Community offers you that. A lack of community, you'll have spinach in your teeth and not know that, but thinking, hey, I'm good. I'm good. Somebody said the other day, Steve, you got to mask your emotions better with your facial expressions. And I'm thinking, I think I'm doing pretty good. I think I'm pretty self-aware. I was almost offended by that.
Right.
Then he said, Steve, why don't you do this? He says, put your phone up in camera mode and have it in the mirror mode so you're looking right back at yourself to see your facial expressions. I'm not doing that. That's stupid. But he was trying to help raise my level of self-awareness because he was seeing something I could not see.
So community serves as a mirror that, to reflect to us. If you have healthy people, trusted people around you, it can really help you get a greater level of self-awareness.
Oh, absolutely.
Greater level of self-awareness.
I remember a pastor that sat underneath for about 4 years, and I remember hearing this. It sounded off when he said it. I just didn't have the language to describe why it sounded off. I was early in ministry, probably 1 or 2 years in. He says, "I'm going to be," I can't remember how he phrased it, but I will be available but not accessible. I said, that sounds weird to say to a congregation, but what he was wanting to do is create distance as best as he could. I understand that we can't be everything to everybody all the time.
Right.
But to communicate that was to say, hey, I want to create a greater distance. It wasn't a large church. Let me just say that. It wasn't like it was 10,000 people or 1,000 people or 500 people.
Right.
I just need to make sure that we establish on the front end that I'm not going to be that kind of guy to you all.
Right.
And that stayed in my mind, and I almost fell into that trap myself.
Yeah. Well, I think, Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not going there. I'm not going there. Okay. I want to bring it down from the 35,000 feet. Let's go down to a little bit closer level. And as I said, what I really wanted to talk about today was helping men heal.
Sure.
So as we think about this issue of how do we get in, we're looking at men that are hurting, but they don't always know how. They know how to hide.
Sure.
They know how to deal, but they don't always know how to heal.
Yeah.
And so how do you see, and I know you have a deep passion for mentoring, for that, how are you seeing men hurt today? What are some ways that we're seeing men hurting?
And I don't want to sound like I'm off somewhere else. I would say that one of the things that I keep seeing is if you've ever seen a child throw a tantrum, it's oftentimes because they don't have the language to articulate their feelings, their emotions, or what they're going through. And what I see with some men is that they're acting out in ways, whether it is hypersexuality, hypermasculinity, and they start acting out in these kinds of things because they don't know how to articulate what's this invisible ache that's within them that could have been triggered by some traumatic experience that they hadn't fully processed. Okay, you may say, I didn't need that man anyway, who was my dad, my biological dad. I don't need him. I'm my own man. But that's a wound that you carry that you haven't really investigated to find out why is it still triggering for me to even establish a male-to-male bond with anybody.
Right.
Because I've never had that opportunity. And so this invisible ache, whatever that might be, it could be you have overbearing mom.
Right.
That treated you like your dad, that left you and it was harmful, and you carry that wound inside of you, and you act out by, unfortunately, abusing women. Right. And so it becomes this acting out that really reveals the pain that's happening on the inside of them.
One of those ways that men are hurting is the inability to express what's actually happening.
Yeah.
In there, so that's creating some pain.
The acting out.
What are some other ways you see men hurting?
Or turning inward.
Okay.
So it's either acting out or turning in. So we'll say they're just shutting down.
Yeah.
And we give them license and permission.
Okay.
Right? Rather than asking them to articulate. Jason Wilson talks about this idea, men are men of action rather than articulation.
Yeah.
So if I don't have the words to be able to speak what's happening within me, I may shut down completely, and then we give cover to that. Oh, that's just Steve.
Yeah.
He just shuts down, right? But that's not normal. The idea is that when I communicate, I'm allowing myself this space to unburden myself rather than carry this burden within me, this pain. And oftentimes we don't often give men the space to articulate. And unfortunately, in some instances, what I'm seeing now with men is that they're getting the courage to speak and communicate their emotions, but not feel safe to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, but now the thing is now, yes, I have gotten the capacity within myself and the awareness within myself to be able to say, this is what I'm feeling. But when I do, you get smacked.
Yes, you soft.
You're weak. What's wrong with you? You know?
Yes.
I'm going to say this, and I hope I can say this nicely, that I won't offend people, but I got to be clear about it. I was writing a book on men in midlife crisis.
Okay.
And I recognized that at one point, and this was several years ago, I was feeling some stuff, and my sister said to me, Jay, you going through a midlife crisis? And I went, I ain't going through no midlife.
Come on.
And I went, oh, snap.
Come on.
I might be.
I might be. Yes.
So I started writing, because that's the way I process life. I write. And so I started writing, and I looked at it, and I realized, I'm going through a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
So as I was writing on this book, I never finished it, but as I was writing it, I shared what I was learning with, I think it was a woman. I was talking about the pain that I was feeling, and that was coming from this, I'm changing, and my life is changing, and I don't really know what's going on. And her response to me is, I'm honestly sharing my thoughts. Her response to me was, pain? You don't know nothing about pain.
Gosh darn.
You ain't never had a baby.
Come on, man.
You ain't never had a baby.
Yes,
You don't know
yes,
nothing about
yes.
pain. And I looked at her and I
My
said,
gosh.
okay. I said, there are two things I'm going to say to you. This is probably going to offend you, but I'm going to say them anyway.
Yeah.
I said, one, you're telling me that only people with vaginas understand pain.
Yeah. My God.
I said, you are dismissing my pain because it's not yours.
Ah, man, come on.
I said, that is wholly unfair.
Yes.
And I said, this is what's going to really offend you. Don't be surprised if your husband never ever tells you he's in pain, because you have weaponized his vulnerability. He has come to you and said, I'm feeling this. I am struggling here.
Well, what's wrong with you?
And you are telling him, you don't have the right to feel pain.
Come on.
You don't have the right, unless it is me, unless you're dealing with me, you don't have the right to feel what you're feeling.
My God.
And most men, it's a struggle.
Yes, it is.
To share that, to be vulnerable anyway. But when you weaponize it, what do I mean by weaponizing that vulnerability? When you take the information I've given you, when you've taken my thoughts, when you've taken my feelings, my words,
come on,
and you have reshaped them on the lathe of your tongue and have turned them into a bat that you use to crack me upside my head.
Yes.
You only get a couple of times to do that.
Yep.
And I'm back into the cave of isolation. And
Yep.
so again, giving men that space to do that, and where it is safe. It is not just, oh, I can have these emotions, but can I share them as well? And know that it's okay. I think that's the way I see men.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think in addition to that, so even beyond marriage, if you don't have that safe space, you need to create that for yourself. Find others that can help you feel safe so that you can process these kinds of emotions, because otherwise, I mean, they become damaging to your soul, right? They become harmful and toxic when they're not managed well. And just as much as we're called to steward our money, steward our time, steward our temple, we also got to steward this inner being.
Right.
Gordon MacDonald has this book entitled Ordering Your Private World. And he says, and this is where most men struggle, we'll project a certain image to the world that we want them to believe about ourselves while neglecting this inner being inside of us. And that means that I need to address my emotions, I need to address my spirituality, I need to address all these things and cultivate that and build that up so that whatever I project is really who I am, not some mist or some fog that I'm projecting to just keep people at a distance from me. And oftentimes when we have men who subscribe to this idea of what manhood looks like, to be married, 2.5 kids, provide for your family, you're all those things. Right. Well, what happens, and matter of fact, I just listened to this one guy make a comment that you will be happy as a man if you do all these things. But as a pastor, as a counselor, I've talked with men who had these things and still were miserable.
Right.
So it's obviously not just the external things I need to do. There's still internal things I need to process and work through. And I've worked with, I'm thinking about one guy in particular who was struggling. He was part of our church back in Arkansas, and he was struggling to be a provider because in our culture, in our community, as a male, you're supposed to be the provider, protector, and all these things, and he was not being these things well. He struggled to maintain employment. And because he didn't articulate that he was struggling to fulfill this identity of manhood that was projected onto him, he turned inward, and that caused him to start drinking. And it created an addiction to where it became controlling to his life. And I remember getting a phone call, and his wife said, hey, I found so-and-so on the side of the road, something's wrong. She had never seen him like that before. She didn't know what this was. And I pulled up on the scene, and I said, oh, he's drunk at 8 o'clock in the morning. He's already drunk because there was this pain he didn't know how to articulate, succumb to it. And rather than lean into the community to get the help he need, he left the community because he was embarrassed, he was ashamed. Right,
Creating those places where we can talk, where there are, I have a group of men I meet with, and it's we call it the gatekeeper gathering. And our kind of our mantra, our theme is men committed to learning with other men and from other men how to be better men, husbands, and fathers. And we need to create those spaces. As men, we need to be very intentional about creating those spaces with people who understand us, who love us, who accept us, who can identify, but also will hold you accountable for change.
Yep.
Because otherwise it just becomes, we all just go sit around and cry and, but, it's the cave of Adullam.
Mm-hmm.
The cave of Adullam, all of those who were suppressed, depressed, oppressed, unpressed, suppressed, came to David and he became the captain of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it said it was 400 men that came to David there in that broken state.
Gosh.
I believe they came to David and they all found David there because they said David is just as broken as we are.
Mm-hmm.
So you find those people who are, birds of a feather.
That's good.
And so they say, well,
Wow.
David is just as sad. David is just as broke. David is just as we are.
Yeah.
And they found him, and they all came, and they sat around.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the amazing thing, and this is what we need as men. We need to find those people, yes, but somebody in that group needs to have a mindset to say, this describes me, but it doesn't define me.
Yes.
And therefore, I'm going to help lead you all to someplace else. And David, in all of his brokenness, still had this connection with God.
Come on.
That allowed him to say, yes, this is where I am, but this is not where I have to be.
Yeah.
David understanding his own spiritual journey, his own relationship with God. And when you read the Psalms are real and raw.
Yeah, it is.
And they show you something of a relationship with God where David recognized his brokenness, but yet he also recognized the power that he had for healing.
Yeah.
And therefore, because he leaned into that power that he had for healing and through his faith, through his relationship with God, he was able to bring those men with him.
Yeah.
And those 400 men were transformed and became David's mighty men of valor.
Yeah, come on.
And they were transformed because of his leadership and his willingness to say, yeah, I'm broken. Yes, this describes me, but it does not define me.
Yeah.
What defines me is what I do with what describes me.
Yeah.
And what do I do with that? And I'm going to trust God, and I am going to become this person that God wants me to be. And we need that. And so with that, using that issue, that picture of this cave of Adullam, of these men, these broken men coming together, not staying broken, but learning to heal. That's a transition for the next thing is the first time I heard somebody use that as a ministry tool was Jason Wilson.
Yeah.
At the cave of Adullam. And so Jason, now listen, if you listening, Mr. Wilson.
My man.
I just want you to know we've met. We got the same name, we got the same heart. We need to hook up, brother.
Yes. Come on.
But you just came from a conference where he was speaking about healing in men. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I think what you just described with that cave of Adullam, was just that for us.
Yeah.
But the thing that I love about that story with David is that his leadership allowed him to showcase that kind of vulnerability.
Yeah.
He didn't try to project strength and not that I'm hurting, I'm in pain. He says he shows all that, and that's why they were drawn to him. And while we were at this conference, these men made it very clear they were leading this discussion that we're going to be real, we're going to be raw, we're going to be transparent. We're going to lay it out. We're going to demonstrate what this looks like. And before we even jumped into the session, man, the moderator stands up and says, hey, so I need all just males in here. And if you're not a male, you need to exit the premises, because they wanted to create that safe space. Not to say that the people, that the women that were there were not are going to honor that safe space. But if you haven't been around men who emoted, you get into the weaponization.
Right.
I don't like a soft man, or whatever the case may be. And they wanted to make sure they protected that time and protected themselves, because they were going to be real, raw, and transparent. Not just asked us who were in the audience to do that. They said, no, we're going to demonstrate so that you can carry that with you. And so they made sure, let's create this safe space among these brothers, and they removed everyone else that didn't need to be there. And I think that's helpful for us as men to understand that we deserve, a safe space.
Right.
We deserve safe space so that we can deal with the things that's within us, so we can be vulnerable, so we can be transparent and know that we don't have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders anymore. That's as Jackson Katz calls this, the tough guys.
Yeah.
G-U-I-S-E.
G-U-I-S-E.
Right. It projects this idea of being strong even under pressure, that we never get weak, we never get tired, we never do any of these things. That's the lie we keep buying. Say, guys, we're going to pull off the mask of strength and power and toughness. We're going to just deal with these emotions, and we're going to describe what that looks like, right? Yeah. And I think that was the first time I ever encountered a space where there were just men hungering for healing, not just being pacified.
That's good, man. I think we do, you're right, we have to create those spaces. So how do we translate those kind of seminal events?
Yeah, I know.
You know, these great things where you have great speakers like Jason Wilson and these great leaders come in and you go to this place and you get hyped.
Yeah.
How do we translate that back into our day-to-day existence? How do we translate that back into our local churches, into our local spaces, into our local life?
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's a really important skill set and a conversation that I think we need to have. I'm going to Connecticut in a few weeks to speak at a conference. And on Friday night, the organizer said, can you come in Friday? Because I want to do a round table with pastors.
Okay.
And he says, the round table is around this. He says, we have these models of ministry for men in churches, but we're still seeing the same brokenness manifested in the community.
Man. He
says, what's missing? What's missing in our ministries that we are not seeing the transformation of men that we need to see?
True.
And he says, I want you to kind of lead a round table discussion around that, what's missing. So I have some ideas, but I'm wondering, I just throw this on you on this.
Yeah, you did.
But do you have any thoughts about that? What is missing within the church that we are not doing a better job of ministering to hurting men? Is there something we're not addressing? Is there something we're not doing? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, my initial thought is that, especially with men, going back to that conference, if we haven't modeled and seen what healthy kind of men's ministry look like, even though that was not a Christian event,
right?
Ministry is about meeting needs. And what they recognize is that there are still needs within men that are going unmet, such as, not being vulnerable, not being transparent, and they're carrying the weight of the world in their soul. Well, how can you create a space that you don't know is needed?
Yeah.
Right. And so if we're saying, hey, this is needed, and because you see the brokenness and the pain exegeted,
yeah,
how do we now minister to the men that go beyond the programs that we're accustomed to? We don't mind doing a Super Bowl gathering for the men, and that's great, but is that the sum total of manhood?
Right.
That we gather around to see men exert themselves with power and physicality.
Right.
Right. When do we create a space where we now sit across from each other to see all of who we are? Because we're not just our genitalia. We're not just our being a father or being a husband.
Right.
We're not just that. We're this whole being that require regular maintenance holistically. And until I think the church realized that we need to do a better job. We've been insufficient because we still see I'm not even going to talk about the larger community. I'm just going to say within the church community, we're not seeing enough healthy spiritual men in the body of Christ, because what that looks like is fully participating in the mission of God.
Yeah. And
oftentimes I see too many times they're not fully engaged.
Right.
They may show up because their wife told them to come to church.
Right. I think that as I was talking with my friend, and he told me he wanted me to do that on Friday night, I was thinking about later in the year I'm going to be speaking someplace else, and I had already kind of written down some thoughts. I'm talking about men. There's work for men to do, but there are adversaries that oppose them.
Yeah.
And so my question was, what are the adversaries that men must overcome?
Oh, wow.
In order to do the work they have been called to do. I mentioned 5 things.
Okay.
Love to hear your thoughts on them.
Okay.
Apathy, passivity, pride, inadequacy, and I just forgot the fifth one.
That's
But
okay.
those four.
Yeah.
Let's look at those four. But apathy, passivity, pride, and inadequacy. What do you think about those? What I said to him, I believe that those things are hindrances
Okay.
that we're not addressing. They're adversaries that we're not addressing in the Super Bowl party.
Right.
That we're not addressing in the wild at heart. And I'm not giving any shade to John Elrich, but we can have these where we're trying to get men to be masculine.
Yeah.
But again, holistically, what does that look like? And so, what you have any thoughts about those things in terms of how each of those words or those issues, those adversaries, if we're not affected, I mean, why are we not addressing those things, or how can we address those things? Any thoughts on
that? I mean, it kind of goes back to something I said earlier. That's messy.
Yeah.
You know, dealing with apathy, to try to probe, to find out why is this brother apathetic towards his faith or towards his family and all that. That means asking questions that you're going to have to deal with. So why would I sit here and ask you, well, why are you just so when it comes to being with your family? Why do you feel like you need to escape them more than be there for them, right? Why are you unwilling to confront things? Going back to that passivity, right? If I have to ask that question, then I have to be prepared for the answer.
Right.
And if that answer, it may prompt me to minister to that.
Right.
To do something. And if I question my own efficacy, my own ability to engage with a question or the response that I hear, then I don't want to answer to expose my own insufficiency.
Right.
Because I remember, tough guys.
Right.
I need to have all the answers. I need to be strong and powerful all the time. So if I ask questions, I don't want to feel like I may not know the answer to.
Yeah.
Right. And so these become threats because we don't want to deal with the mess that comes behind that.
Yeah.
And so let's stay behind the mask. Let's stay safe. Right? Because the idea, you talked about pride, again, it's safe to stay behind that. I've confronted men before on the issue of pride. Well, what are you talking about? Well, that right there.
Right.
I mean, could it be, right? So I will follow, could it be possible in the realm of your world that you have an issue with pride?
Yeah. You know what I think about is each of those areas. I just say something about a couple of them. I said if we're going to be effective in helping men heal, because we have to deal with those areas. Yeah. Because those are areas that create pain and create woundedness. Because we're not dealing with the issues, the things that are causing the woundedness.
Sure.
The woundedness will continue. And so I think about just the idea of inadequacy. I don't know a man who at some point or another has not dealt with this. I'm just not good enough.
Sure.
I'm not enough. No matter what I provide, it's not enough. No matter what I give, it's not enough. I was talking to a gentleman recently, and I don't think he wasn't a single father, but I met him at a child care place while I was doing a presentation for men. And he was there, and I said, what are you struggling with? What are the things that you're struggling with that nobody knows? And one of the guys said, I'm not enough. He says, no matter how much I work, it's never enough. And he says, so I can work 70 hours a week or 60 hours a week and bring home the money, but then I'm criticized for not spending enough time with the kids. He says, but then if I spend enough time with the kids, then I can't work in order to provide for the family. Now I'm not enough. He says, and then when I spend time with the kids, well, I don't do it the way that my wife does it. And I don't play with them the way she does, or I'm not dressed in this. So even when I spend time with them, it's not good enough. When I don't spend time with them, it's not good enough. When I work too much, it's not good enough. If I don't work enough, it's not good enough. He says, I don't know how to live. I'm just not enough. And so that inadequacy. And one of the life lessons that I have learned, especially in the last 15 years, is I've had to work through my own pain, my own brokenness. One of the two most important life lessons is this: for many men, the sense of inadequacy overrides their sense of responsibility. So men never want to be in a situation where they're constantly being told that they're not enough. that they're inadequate, you know. And so if we are constantly being told we are inadequate or constantly being made to feel that we're not enough, after a while we remove ourselves from those situations because we don't want the pain of that. And the pain of irresponsibility does not feel nearly as bad as the pain of inadequacy.
Absolutely.
And so if we're not addressing those areas in men, well, what do you mean you're not enough? Why not? What do you need? Who are you and who are you supposed to be? If we're not addressing those issues, then we're just putting bandages on cancer. You know,
and you know, and the tragedy, going back to why our communities continue to not thrive, is when those issues go unaddressed. There's a book, The Body Keeps Score. The idea is that trauma doesn't just stay with you.
Right.
It can be transmitted to other people.
Right.
And so if I'm saying I'm feeling inadequate, I'm not ever doing enough, then guess what happens? That pain gets passed on to my children.
Right.
And my children's children.
That's exactly
because it continues on, because it's never been dealt with.
Right.
The idea of identifying the trauma or the pain that you have is that you got to interrogate. Okay, what's causing this feeling of inadequacy? What is it about me? What is it about the people around me? What is it in life that's triggering this sense of inadequacy? And once I discover these answers, then I begin to integrate that into my well-being and become more holistic in my approach to life. And therefore, rather than passing on pain, I pass on healing to my children. I can remember one instance, there was something that happened in our house, and it was causing some pain for my oldest son. And I remember I was sitting with him, and this is the first time I ever cried in front of my son, because I could see the pain in his eyes, and I didn't want him to think that his dad never experienced pain, that I never cried. And in that instance, we were able to cry together, because I wanted him to understand that engaging in this space can bring healing, and you don't have to push that aside. So as a kid, I didn't get to have that experience. I developed that, and guess what now I get to do? I don't have to just pass on my pain, because now I processed that. I dealt with that. Now I get to pass on to my children healing rather than pain. And then what happens, they get to carry that forward.
I often say that I don't believe in generational curses, but I do believe in generational habits.
Oh gosh, yes.
Generational curses indicate or communicate that something outside of me, outside of my family, has been superimposed upon me and is making me do something of which I have no control. But generational habits are observed and adopted patterns of behavior. So it is not just that I'm an abuser because there's a curse on my family. I'm an abuser because I saw my brothers do it, and I saw my dad do it, and my dad did it because his dad did it to him, or his dad did it to his mom. And so therefore I see that behavior. I've observed it, I adopt it as my source, and I do the same thing to others. And so generational habits can be broken by intentional effort and discipline, you know. And so I talked to a young lady the other day who told me she was in this relationship with this young man, and she said, I want to help him because I see he's angry and he can be kind of violent and he's angry. And then she says, but I want to help him because it reminds me of my dad, and I hated how I was scared of my dad because my dad was violent and my dad was abusive. But then he did that to my sister, and he never hurt me, but then my sister became an abuser to me. And then now, what does she do? She ends up in a relationship with a person who's that way. Observed and adopted patterns of behavior because you're not self-aware enough to be able to say, wait a minute, I don't want that. And therefore, I am going to be conscious about changing that, okay? We have just a few minutes left, but there is another statement. I told you there were two lessons that I've learned in the last 15 years. One of them was what I just mentioned about inadequacy. Here's the second and maybe the most important lesson I've learned in the last 15 years is this: you cannot heal until you reveal what's been concealed.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that statement?
Yes.
What would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of touches on something I mentioned earlier about Nehemiah's journey.
Yeah.
You can't just start the work until you see the disaster.
Yeah.
You got to see the rubble. You got to see that. There cannot be progress until you deal with the rubble. Mm-hmm. And so often we try to move forward in life without dealing with the rubble. We think just stepping over it is enough.
Yeah.
Ignoring it is sufficient.
Yeah.
As long as I can do the building.
Yeah.
But guess what you're going to do? You're going to trip over the rubble.
Right.
The rubble's still going to be in the way of progress. And there cannot be progress until you deal with the rubble that's in the way. So you got to deal with it. Either it becomes, watch this, you incorporate that into the building.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the things that you cannot use, you discard.
Yeah.
So that's what metabolizing is all about, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm eating, I eat the food, it takes the nutrients, it helps build me up while expelling the things I don't need.
Right.
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 So rubble is the same thing. I can look at. I need to deal with it.
Yeah.
Either I make it part of the progress or I get rid of it.
Yeah.
And if you don't deal with it, it's going to deal with you.
Yeah. 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 That is, I think about that in my own life. Mm-hmm. Man, I had secrets. Mm-hmm. And
you too?
Yeah. No. Well, you ain't got no secrets, man. What
Okay.
you talking about, man?
I feel harmed.
Okay. But no, man. But when we think about that, there are things that I held, and I'm going to be honest with you. Right now, I'm dealing with something right now. I'm about to kind of publicly reveal a secret that I've kept for 50 years.
Oh man.
And I am personally right now, I'm in the midst of dealing with that right now, that I have healed, and I've been going through a whole lot of process of addressing those things and addressing the pain with that.
Yeah.
But years ago, God said to me, I need you to deal with a secret because it's holding back your ministry. It's holding you back from being who I created you to be.
My God.
And so therefore, I need you to address it, get it out in the open, because you cannot heal until you reveal what has been concealed. Well, now there's like a new layer of that pain, a new layer of that secret was pulled off 2 years ago.
Man.
But I've still been kind of carrying some of that. And now I'm about to say, this is the truth. This is my truth. And there are some people who are going to be scandalized by it. There are some people that are going to be hurt by it. There are some people that are going to come at me, or as my friend said, they're going to come at you with the what the hell question.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so now when they come at me, what do I do with that? What do I do with all of the questions that are going to come as a result? Because wait a minute, I can't talk about, now how do I address that?
Yeah, yeah.
But I can address it now because it may create a blow, it may be a blow, but addressing it doesn't create blood.
Yeah.
I just got to deal with the blowback.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
You know, but how do I prepare myself? Because I have protected certain people. I have protected names, and I have protected families, and I have protected things, but to my detriment.
Yeah, yeah.
And so now I was like, how do I healthily deal with these things and recognizing it? I cannot hide.
Yeah.
I don't want to just deal with them. I don't want coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
There needs to be transformation. There needs to be healing, and there needs to be wholeness. The man with the leper, the 10 lepers, not 10 of them were healed, but only one of them was made whole.
Gosh.
And there's a lot of us that, yes, we have changed clothes and we put on our church clothes and we got a new wardrobe, but a lot of times it's still hiding bleeding wounds.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're not healing. We're not looking to heal. And so I think that that's a really important thing. So I just made an executive decision that we need a part 2.
Okay.
I just made that decision right now. We just need a part 2 because I really, really want to talk about trauma.
Yeah, okay.
I want to talk about trauma in terms of how as men, as people, period. But again, I'm in this season of Real Life Matters. Real Life Matters. You know, in this season of Real Life Matters, I've been focusing upon fatherhood, manhood, and marriage. and really helping men learn how to deal with those things that are keeping them from being the men that they always wanted to be.
Sure.
And the men, the fathers they always wanted to be, the men they always wanted to be, the husbands they always wanted to be. What's keeping us from being that?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to address those issues. And I think one of the major issues, that was the fifth one, is trauma.
Trauma. Okay.
That was the fifth one. Okay, there you
Lord
go.
Came on through.
Yeah. So trauma, inadequacy, pride, passivity, and apathy. But I wanted to talk about this trauma, and I'll say this as I look ahead to the next time when we talk later. I recently spoke at a conference, and my topic was healing the invisible brokenness of manhood.
Yeah.
Moving from trauma to a renewed identity. And I believe that there's a lot of men that are still living in their trauma. Yes, they've put on the prosthetic legs, they've got the new clothes, they've cleaned up a little bit, they don't have blood stains on them anymore, but the internal trauma is still there. And how do we help men heal from that trauma and not be re-traumatized?
I'll say this, it's got to be that first step as a setup for our next session. The first step has to be acknowledging that there is a problem.
Yes.
And I think we live in a society, especially among men, that we don't acknowledge that there's a problem.
Yes.
We just fix it, we move on, we don't acknowledge it. I mean, the one thing you could hear from brothers often, how you doing? I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm cool.
Yeah.
There's never, man, I'm sad.
Right.
Man, I'm in a bad place.
Right.
I'm angry.
Right.
Now, let's really name this, and even giving men, I would say the second thing, giving men the range of emotions that's part of your human experience.
Yeah.
You're not just anger.
Right.
That's not the only emotion.
Right.
You're not just sad. That's not the only emotion. There is a range of emotions, and all of them have their benefits. All of them have their detriments.
That's exactly right.
But you need to know how to manage those.
Right.
And if you don't acknowledge that there's a problem, then that problem will get the best of you, and it may not affect you directly. It affects you indirectly through the people around you.
Right.
Because you passed on that pain unbeknownst to yourself.
Yeah. And if I would, maybe the last thought on that is if I would move it away from just men for a second, take it back out to the larger church. There's a phrase that I often hear, I'm too blessed to be stressed.
God help me.
And I'm like, well, I don't know what planet you live on, because on this planet, that ain't possible.
No.
You know, this idea that you're so blessed that you don't have issues. It's
that.
like, nope, that's a wrong theology.
It is.
It's a bad theology that tells us that it is something, I am not spiritual if I am in pain. I am not spiritual if I have problems. God is not happy with me if I am struggling. No. That the struggling means that God is not happy with me. I can manifest anything I want. I'm sorry, God's name ain't Genie.
Yeah.
And we are not God. And so we have to have that proper theology about life and the reality of the broken world. We are broken people living in a broken world that is full of other broken people who create systems and problems and organizations that break us. And so we need to keep that reality, because if we don't have that full understanding, then we have a very false sense of reality, but we also have a false sense of God in terms of what God is supposed to do and who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to navigate the pitfalls and the potholes that we face. So thank you all for joining us for another episode of Real Life Matters, where we have real life people talk about real life problems and try to come up with some real life solutions. Wanted to thank my new friend, Dr. Steve. Dr. Stephen Bell. So happy that he was here with us. And we're looking forward to another conversation where we can talk about trauma and look at what that looks like in men. So in the meantime, listen, I want you to be healthy. Remember, you can't heal until you deal with those things that you've concealed in your life. Maybe you try to protect somebody, maybe you try to protect yourself. But whatever it is, you know what? You'll die of a cancer that's never diagnosed. So God bless you. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next time.